Hi everybody, I'm going to make a shadow puppet from scratch, and I hope to make a video that shows you shadow puppet jointing and rods, and I'll talk about different techniques, different styles, and different material. Just for a note, there is no best material. The best material is the material you have, and then out of that, the best material that you have and is cheapest for now, for this class. So I drew a little puppet, and I didn't plan on it, didn't think about it, but you could see I did the pencil lines, and then I refined it with marker, and I'm going to cut that out, and I'll be back with you in a little bit, and we'll start with jointing. All right? See you in a bit. Okay, so I'm back, and I've cut out the pieces. It took me about 10 minutes to cut these out. Once again, this is chipboard, which is like lots of pieces of cardboard smushed together, very similar to what you would get in a cracker box or cookie box or cereal box. And this is a little bit heavier, so you'll get an idea. Let's see if I could do it this way. It's heavy. I like to use stuff that's heavy. Because that gives a chance for gravity to help you with motion. And we'll talk about that. But you should use whatever you're comfortable cutting out. To cut this out, I just use these kind of heavy-duty Fisker scissors. I use the short, snubby tips rather than my other Fisker scissors, just because I did. You could use an X-Acto blade, of course. Whatever is comfortable for you. So now I'm going to move into the jointing. And I'm going to talk about the two different kinds of joints. There's a string joint, a knotted string joint. That's one type, knotted string joint or a string joint. And it's just like what it sounds. It's a piece of knotted string. And then the other joint is a wire joint. And there are a lot of different variations, and I'll go through them with you as I move to the other camera. All right, the knotted string joint. The reason you would want to use a knotted string joint is because you want a loose joint that gravity can work without a control rod on it, or you want something that just moves and swings very freely. These are the different things that I use. This is a kind of braided, nylon, but it's very thin and it's very strong. Field and Stream. I'm pretty sure I bought it at Dick's Sporting Goods. This is called squidding line. It is kind of nice and thick. It's braided nylon. It's just a little bit thicker. Thicker for me is easier to use. I actually got this by the O'Neill many years ago, and I bought 3 rolls of it. This is nice, but it likes to do its own thing. It doesn't hold a knot very well. Speaking of not holding a knot very well, we all know about monofill, and this is a pretty thick monofill. 60-pound test. But it's really hard to get the knots to really to bite into it. So here's kind of the best of both worlds. This is called fly fishing line, which is what fly fishermen would use. And inside of this is a plastic tubing on the outside, is a tiny little braided nylon line, which is really strong. But the coating on the outside makes it easy. I like it for my big fat fingers. It takes a knot and it just holds it. Now, when you're laying out your pieces, I'm going to assume this is the screen side because it's all one color and the screens do transmit color. So this rosin paper is going to be the screen. You want your moving pieces as they layer up away from being pinched in the screen. You want them on the performer's side because if I put it here, that defeats the purpose. When I push my rod and push the puppet against the screen, this is not going to swing very freely. So pieces are on the top side, performer side, or just hold them up and make sure they swing free. Let me get a little cutting mat. I use these cutting mats. This one I have really given through the ringer, but I make my marks with that. So I'm going to do one hole with. Oh boy, I've really beaten that up. I'll do one hole by hand. So here is a drill bit. Here is the drill that I like to use. People make fun of me because it's a dinky little drill, but boy, oh boy, is it handy. And it just takes the bits like that. There's also an adapter for holding any piece. So here, I'll do it by hand first. And you can make these holes with a pin or awl, but it's really nice and easy. I'm just spinning this until I feel the mat giving way. Okay. Let's see if I got it. A drill makes a nice clean hole. So I've got a nice clean hole. I can see the light through it, and then I'll just do this with the other one. A little drilling sound. Don't be nervous. And it's just that quick and easy. Oops. There we go. Now we should be able to see a nice hole, a nice clean hole. Let me do that just because it'll make me happy. If you need to, you can bring in your awl and push it in and open it wider. So now I take my piece of fly fishing, and I'm going to make two beginnings of the shoelace knots. The cross. All right, so I've got a nice big knot that is bigger than the diameter of the hole. So when I thread this through, this is the screen side, put the knot through, the knot is not going to come out. And maybe I'll trim this little extra piece because it looks weird. Birds don't have that kind of thing. They have cloacias, I think. So there, we get rid of that little dangly part. And now I'll put the other piece on top. So here is the end, and here is the hole. And I thread that through. Bada boop. Sunk. And now I can take this time also to lock it down with my finger just for a moment and play with it and say, okay, you know, it doesn't look like he's kicking himself too badly in the butt. La, 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 la. This tail feather may have to go or be redesigned. Or I may have to cut a little piece of, like make a washer and put a washer in between these two pieces to lift it up just a little bit so it doesn't grab on this little tail feather that's making me crazy. So here is the first knot. And what you want to do before you pull this knot real tight is get a pin or a nail or your awl, and so that when you tighten it down, it goes as far down as possible, leaving the littlest space possible. All right, so I've got one, and I want to do two. So now it gets a little tricky, but you make your knot, you see, and you put your awl or pin or whatever, and you make that knot and try to make it slide under the first knot. And that's going to tighten up the distance between these two pieces. All right? So I don't know how I can do this without gravity, but you can see it moves really quite freely, except where it gets caught on the gosh darn tail feather. So here you go. I am not a good designer, or rather, trial and error. So the other kind of wire, the other kind of joint is a wire joint. And you might consider using a wire joint because it keeps it tight. It keeps it real tight, and it has more control, in my opinion. Now, I'm going to make a rod for this arm, and I'm going to mark out the rod. I'm going to just follow this line and find a point that I can get the longest length. That's where my rod might be. We'll talk about rods in a minute. But here's the pivot point. And here, somewhere in here is where the rod will start, like that. Right. So I like a spiral wire joint, and I'm going to use florist wire. Boy, it doesn't like that. This, I think, is 22 gauge florist wire from my local craft store. And I'm going to use about a finger's worth to start. That'll be nice and easy. These are nippers or diagonal cutters, or I don't know what the proper term is. When you cut, be careful because the wire can go shooting away. So I always like to hold the loose end before I cut so it keeps it from shooting away. Watch your eyes. Watch your eyes. All right, this is a little bit short. But basically with this wire, I'm going to put it through both pieces and distribute half on the top and half on the bottom. And then I'm going to make a spiral so that the pieces are locked together. Actually, I'm only going to do it on one side until I put my rod on. Oh, I didn't make a hole. So you could do a drill, you can do an awl, you could pierce your friend's ear with while you're you're doing your puppetry at the same time. All right, so I've got about halfway equidistant. I'm just going to put this down for now on this side. I'm not going to spiral that up because, nope, I'm going to do the screen side. That's more important for now. See, I'm not thinking right. All right, so here's the screen side, and what I'm going to do is put my finger on the pivot point and the wire and use that to wrap a kind of spiral. Around, 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 around. And speaking of under, I want to get this scratchy, yucky thing under. I don't want it scratching my screen. So I hold the loose, scratchy end. I get a screwdriver, a flathead screwdriver, or an awl, and I lift the spiral up. And I don't know how this is translating, but basically I took that spiral and turned it up so that I can try and take some needle nose pliers. Sorry, I'm watching and doing it at the same time. I'm just crimping it so that it goes under the other wires. And let me zoom in on that. I've picked up the spiral, so there's basically you're getting rid of any scratchy point. All right, so you won't scratch up your screen. This one I'll leave for now until I get my rod in place so that I can disassemble it and put the rod on the wing by itself and then put the wing with the rod back on the puppet. This one I'm going to call a figure 8 wire joint. Let me just get a little visual aid. You're going to take the wire and you're going to make a loop and another loop and then come back. And so the loops will stay on one side of the puppet, and these two will get pinched together and go down and then spread back apart, very much like a brass paper fastener, which you could also use a brass paper fastener. Very easy. If you use a brass paper fastener, you're also going to want to get a nice round hole. So use a hole punch or make a perfectly round hole because the brass fasteners are not round like the wire. So you've got to have a big round hole for that to really move around in there. But basically we take the wire, make a loop, and let me do that now if I can. This should be pretty easy. So I made one loop. Let me see the shadow of it better. And then I'll make another loop. It's like making a pretzel, I guess, if you're not, celiac. All right, so then we take these two together, and what we would do, all right, so here is the top part that moves. This is the body of the puppet. You would put both of the straight wires through, lock. Let me get rid of this bird. He flew in the coop. And then I put them two together, and then I bend this pretzel at a 90-degree angle, maybe spread them out, maybe not. And on the back side, take these two things and spread them so there's no way they can go into the hole. I know the lights are messing things up a bit. All right, so pretzel wire joint. It's not, to me, as clean. Maybe I don't know how to make them as well, but that's just another way to do it. I'm not looking at the screen. I'm looking at my thing and realize. And maybe if you can plan it out so that the scratchy part is the part that's away from your screen, and the round smoothie part is the part that touches your screen. It's just really thick. Maybe if I spread the loops out as well, maybe that's a little bit better. But basically, you just lock two things together, and one of them can move, or the other one can move. Practice, practice, practice. So that is jointing. Wire, spiral wire, knotted string. See how I've got. All right, now it's time to talk about rods, and this is where things can get a little complicated. But let's start by keeping it simple. You can make a rod with a bendy straw. This is a straw, and I know we're not supposed to use them anymore, but I got a bunch left over, so I'm going to make art. What you do, is you undo some of the boop-de-bups. You see it's got those little, and then you bend it into a 7 shape. Okay? And that can be a control rod. What I would do with a straw control rod and masking tape or Scotch tape is tape it to the puppet, probably like this, more of an up and down. I wish I was a better monitor performer. Okay, and the straw would stick straight up and down as it was taped on, like a horizontal control. Okay, you want to get fancier? You put 2 straws together. There's a straight straw and a bendable straw stuck together. Straight, bendable, pinch one, insert, and then you've got super straw. This is what I do for kids and workshops. You would also probably want to put a piece of tape, Scotch masking or otherwise, across the seam so you don't get that telescoping go up or down. You want to get real big with straws, you look for the ones that are bendable straws for like bubble tea on Amazon. All right, so that's one way to go. It will not last long. So let's make a better control rod. The ones that I generally use have a bit of dowel wood and a bit of wire. In this case, I have spring steel, which sometimes I like for the extra kabong, but you could definitely do florist wire. This is 18 gauge florist wire, and it's very easy to bend, and it should handle a little bit before it gives out. I like to make the rods into a 7 shape. Putting it over my shoulder so maybe you can see it. Okay. So it's got a little bit of up, over, and down, or an upside down capital L. At the other end where the wood goes into it, I drill a little hole, bend the end of the wire to go into that hole, and I find a way to secure that thing so that it can't come out of the hole. And that way, if I turn the dowel, then the wire has to turn. My mentor and hero, Richard Bradshaw, likes to drill down the center and then fill it with epoxy and put the thing. So he's got it's perfectly centered, which is pretty nice. But I find that after some time, the epoxy can give up, and then it'll just spin in there. So I like drilling through the dowel and then putting the rod through it. So that's what I'm going to show you tonight. One other option is to do a vertical control. The thing about this control, that's the Bradshaw control is what I'm going to call it, is that the puppets can store flat. They can be worked at 90 degrees, held up at 40, or anywhere in between. It's like making a hinge. And in this case, he puts 6 holes, 3 above and 3 below, and that's why we have that 3 bend, that L, because he puts one at the corner and one at the other corner and one in the middle. And that's how the puppet, which represents this card, is the puppet, just a very small puppet, has a hinge to it. And so he puts a long piece of wire that he makes into a U shape like a staple, and he puts it through, and then, wow, this isn't the puppet, I'm sorry, he would glue this whole piece of card to the puppet with contact cement. But I don't care for that because then it's locked into place and you can't change, or it's a lot of work to change where your rod wants to be. So I drill through it and I wire it directly to the puppet. Oh boy. All right. If you hear wind blowing, I've got a fan because I'm sweating my head off. Here are some of the tools we're going to use to make the rod. Possibly a drill. This is the time where I think you want a drill. You don't want to do it with a hand bit. It'll take quite a time. Needle nose pliers. This is a little tiny hand saw. I'm going to take it out as I call off the pieces. This is 18 gauge Florist wire. I'm going to try and make 2 rods just so that we get it. These are what I call Lyman pliers. They're nice and for bending big wire, thick wire. Dowel. I use generally oak because what's coming out of the stores these days is really pathetic. It's almost like reed. So with very little effort, I just killed that, and that's not what you're going to want to tour with or perform with. But I may go back to it for a little bit. We'll see. Dowel, a thing to drill in to protect your surface, drill bits, and a special little thing that I like to call a block of wood. And this could also be what you drill into. But this block of wood is kind of special because I sawed it a couple of times, and there's like a little channel. And I find it real helpful when drilling down into something so that it doesn't slip out. Anyways, this board really helps me, and so maybe you could, consider it. It's just like a U I made with a couple passes of a table saw. I know not everybody has a table saw, but like I said, when you're drilling the rod, it just holds it from spinning and going all over the place. But it's just a piece of scrap wood. I made a bunch of them and cut them small. And tell me what you might use when you figure it out. Or maybe I will sell these. I don't know. All right. So the first thing I'm going to do is this is what we're going to bend our wire into. I think it's that way. The first bend, this length here is determined about how much space you have here. So you can kind of guesstimate or measure it. But this space, keeping the second bend or the elbow, keeping that in line with the pivot point. See how I drew a line? I'm going to keep that there. And the reason why, this is going to be huge. This is big theory now. Let me get back to this. If I put the rod with this is the center of a circle. You see? It's the pivot point. It's the point that travels the least. This dot here, this mark and this hole, is the center of a circle. It's a pivot point. It's the point that moves the least as it goes around. When you're putting the rods on, this is heavy duty. When you're putting your rods on, try and keep your pivot point in line with your other pivot point, and that'll give you the most movement for the least the most movement for the least effort. So, the least torque will get you the most movement. If I were to put the rod way out here away from the pivot point, then I have to move this thing up and down a whole lot. If I keep the pivot point in line, then I can get that same movement with just a little bit of torque. It's so much easier. There may be times when you have to put your rod somewhere else out of line, but I designed this so that I hopefully can keep it in line. So I make my first bend. I'm just grabbing a little bit, and holding it firmly closed and bending it down or turning it up. And I've got this part, yeah? So now I'm going to measure this out roughly and say I want to bend here. So I get my pliers in place. And this one, I'm going to take, I'm going to bend from here down to make the 7. And that's just something I don't know if I can show you. Let me measure it again. I hold it and I just bend it down or turn it in. And so, oh my gosh, that's not good. What I want is this little pigtail to be flatter. So the florist wire, I could just turn. So now it's laying flat. Something like kaboing, kaboing, kaboing. So there we go. We got our rod. And here, I'm just going to use this whole length. I think it's 12 inches, and then I'll trim it later. But basically, we want this pigtail, as it's laying flat, this little part here, this third bend, to be going up and into the rod. And that is because we want to bend this up, because that way the rod will sit on top of it. If we do it the other way, then there's going to be always a lot of pressure because of the thickness of the dowel it's just not going to lay flat in packing. It'll be trial and error, I guess, because I can't explain it any better than that right now. But basically, I'm going to take a little tiny bit, as littlest bit as I can, and I'm going to bend it the way I know I should bend it, which is up. So that's laying flat, and the little bend is actually coming up towards the camera. I'm going to turn it 90 degrees so you could see. All right, so we got that, and I'm going to overlap it a little bit because the florist wire is not super strong. You can use mild steel of different thicknesses. So I see where that lines up to the dowel. They're right next to each other, and I'm just going to put a little mark, and that's where I'm going to drill a little hole, and I'm going to find a drill bit that matches the diameter of this wire, which I think is my smallest drill bit. I'll lock that in, put the stuff aside for a minute, pull in my little block that keeps it from moving. Let me see which way I'm going to go. Can I go? Yeah, let's see about that. Where's my mark? There she is. Okay. This is as unintimidating as a drill can get. I know. Sorry to bump the camera. Oh, you see it's got a little LED light. All right. All right, drill a nice clean hole all the way through. All right. I don't have my glasses on. That will be a big help because I am a one-eyed, nearsighted fellow. Or farsighted. I love Gary Larson. All right. So put that in there. Hold it in place and put it in line. There you go. Except now you've got to secure that. You can do it with tape, of course. Tape. This is a cheap, cross between gaffer's tape and duct tape. Let me just get a little piece. Am I ever going to sleep tonight because I'm going to be editing this forever? All right. So I wrap the tape around. I got the dowel first, and then I just wrap it around. And for the purposes of this class, that can be done. All right? We've got control over it by turning it. Let me get my hand in there. I'm turning it, and it's moving. Wow, great. Okay, we're back. And so we have benched the florist wire. We drilled a hole through the dowel. We've put that little third bend pigtail into the hole, secured it with tape. But what happens is, this is probably 2 or 3 years old. I don't know if you could see, but it's wiggling, and it's going to work its way out after some good use. So here are some more permanent solutions to attach. Super easy way. What the heck? I had it right here a minute ago. This technique was taught to me by Jim Krupa. Look, zippy tie, yay. All right, little tiny mini zip ties. You could also use this in another way for shadow puppets. Now, keep your mind out of the gutter, please. Ba, 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 ba. Zip tie. That ain't going nowhere. And then you could use your diagonally cutters. Chop, chop. Remember, the part that is beveled is where it's going to fly. I am not going to do a cover. I'm not going to do a hold. Let's see if I can get the camera. Ready? I feel like David Letterman. Oh, look at that. Is this still okay? All right. So zip tie is one way to do it. The problem with zip ties, in my opinion, is if you ever have to choke way up, then that's a little intrusive. As long as you stay away from it and you don't have to hold, I mean, you can make a really long rod. Like, it doesn't even fit onto your computer screen. That's so long. But yeah, be aware that if you may have to do another version, which is actually this is not the great. Is that the? Let me see if I can get the great gold. All right. Another way is to use wire. This is aluminum wire, which is not what you want to use. You want to use florist wire, which is a little more strong and stiff. But for the purposes of showing up on our background, I'm going to use this. Now, this is kind of a neat thing, and I am going to show you the easy way, the easy tool that everybody has access to it, but there may be a point where I show you the really cool tool where I learned this technique. Basically, we wrapped it around, and we're going to twist it like a twist tie, like a bread tie. So we've crossed it, and then I'm going to twist it 2 or 3 times, right? And I'm trying to hold it in place from it sliding up or down. It's actually dogged down pretty good. Here's the cool part. Where is the cool part? Lockjaw pliers. Is that what they're called? Channel locks? No, lockjaw. I don't know. The pin vice grips. All right, so I'm putting the vice grips on the X that I've made with a few twists and locking them. All right. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to twist them around until I close this distance. You see? Let me try turning it this way. That might be showing you okay. Can you see the little space? So I'm going to, this is very awkward for me, twist and get. The lockjaw makes it so that I don't have to hold it closed. And so I'm twisting until it's really tight, and then I'm just going to turn it 90 degrees and keep twisting, and it breaks off. That wasn't a good break. That's a little bit sharp. But if you can do it with practice, and maybe you want to stick to cable ties, let me do it my way. Or I'm not looking at the monitor. Yeah, that's a little bit better. So that break is not sharp. And when you do it really well, it wraps underneath itself, so there's no sharpness to it at all. Oh, I got ink on me. Look at that. It's like a shark. Okay, so here we are with the rod made and secured. And we've taken our piece that we're going to move. I've marked out where it fits, and I've drilled holes 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3 above and below where I want to attach the rod. I've taken 2 of these pieces, and I've bent them, and I've put them in place. So here we go. I'm going to take it and bend it into a U, or a little staple. And from the screen side, remember the clean side is the screen side. Remember, when you put this staple wire through, it's got to be from the screen side down and comes out the performer side because we want smooth. We always want smooth touching our screens because we don't want to scratch them up. So here we go. Can you see I put them? One's in and the other is in. And here it is on the performer side. Oh yeah, what's this? This is my new, not my new, it's new to you. This is called a Robinson's pliers or a safety plier. And it does the same thing as you saw previously done with the vice grips. But it's smaller and better, and it's easy for me to twisty, fasty. So let's start with one side. I'm just lifting up. This is now coming up to the camera, the bottom wire. The top wire is going to go across it, and we make an X. Don't know how that's showing up, but we twist it. Okay. Yes, Tyler. Oops. You didn't hear me say that. We take that crossed wires and we twist it until it gets nice and tight, and then we turn under and keep twisting, and it breaks off, and that little nub that's left is so smooth, like a baby's wiry bottom. We cross it, we twist it, we grab it with our Robinson safety. I got a little bit of wire that I got to get out. There it is. That's from the break off from the last one I did. Okay, squeeze it, lock it, twist it. Oh, if your piece is big enough, you can drill a hole that's big enough for the zip ties. And instead of wires, you can be doing this with zip ties. That might be a little bit better because the zip ties won't break through your cardboard. If you twist this wire, it's so small, if you keep twisting it and don't wrap it or under itself, it'll eat right through and break. So that's the tricky part, and that's the reason why Mr. Richard Bradshaw, my hero, does it the way I showed you before, by making the rod with a little piece of card, and then he would just take that and glue that to the puppet. And he uses contact cement, which I don't condone, but he's of a different generation. So, but this way it really, keeps the wire from ripping through. If the wire does break through, what I've done is cut something, put a popsicle stick or a toothpick, so that'll keep the wire from coming through. Now, the wires I'm spinning tonight aren't very tight, but they should do the job well enough, and as you do it, because this is new to me. I have never done this document camera situation before. Good. So now we've got a nice, loose, good torque, and now we will just finish it off by picking up the puppet with the knotted string joint. And now I still have, here's the screen side, that smooth wrapped under wire. You get nice and flat. It won't play. All right, but I make sure it's no hard scratchy points. And bring this up 90 degrees. It's coming right at the camera. What's about the camera? I'm sorry. I have to widen the hole. There we go. And I have to put on my glasses. Gee whiz, that would be helpful. Just doing this in an angle I've never done before. So these pieces are together, and you want to push them down. See how it's popping up a bit? Turning it sideways. You just want to make it as tight as, not super tight. Now I'm wrapping the spiral, which I shouldn't have put red. Can you see me making a spiral? Now you'll see. I'll try and keep it in the brown. Keep It in the Brown is my favorite Earth, Wind, and Fire cover band. All right, there we go. And this one you don't have to worry about. And so let's try. Oh, yeah. Dun, 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 dun. Hey. Oh. Na, na, na. All right, so that's a rod, attachment, joints. You're at this point, you're ready to go do a birthday party show, right? All right, good luck, and I'll smell you later. Okay, so here we are at the old little shadow screen, and here is the puppet. It's a great beginning, right? We got movement like that, up, down. We got a little bit of, I think it would be good to put a penny here and maybe a penny here to help with that weight. It's a little, another thing that'll help is a stop. And a stop is just what it says. It's a way to stop this wing, for instance, from going all the way around and having no control. So if you figure out the highest point you want the wing to go, you would tie a piece of string from here to here so that it can go back as far as you want it to, but when you raise it, the tension causes it to stop. There's also a way to put a block of popsicle sticks or whatever to stop it there, and that way you'd have a lot more control. It seems to me that the screen is not tilting forward to my liking, but we all got to get used to it. But yeah, if you find that you want to maybe prop you can take a book or whatever, coasters, and prop up. I can't quite get there. Get that up a little bit more so that it leans forward. That'll definitely help you do it. And so this long rod that I thought was great is actually not quite long enough to prop itself to the table. So you could get a chopstick and dog it together, or just make a new rod that's longer. So yeah, that's the other thing. You want your metal part of your rod to be as long as the highest point all the way down to its feet. That's where the dowel, the wooden part, starts, and you want the dowel to be able to go from the bottom of the foot bar-ish all the way and hit the table so it can prop itself up, which it doesn't right now. But hey, you know, we're beginners. This is my first puppet teaching. No, it's not. There's no excuse for that. My light's a little bright. The camera doesn't like it. So there you go. I'm going to stop. No, I'm not going to stop because you can't stop until you pop. I'm just going to take the camera. Come with me. Come. We're going to be in the audience now. Let's see if I can set it up so you can see my tripod and the things in my sacroiliac. There we go. So we got a second rod on the feet would be good, and then you can control the feet. So you could have 2 rods per puppet, and generally for beginning, 3 parts to it is a good start. But we can do, I guess we can. That's not good puppetry, but it's funny as hell. All right, so nowhere to go but upward, right? So, but this is just like, you know, so when we start tomorrow on a Monday for the first class day, you got a little bit something under your belt, and we'll go from there. I got to edit this thing, and then I will see you tomorrow. Bye. All right, I lied. I couldn't leave well enough alone. I went in, and I put a second rod on the feet. So there's that. I think that's going to be better. Let's see. Go check it out. Lights. Handstand. Whoa. Flip. Nope. Yes, I got it. Haha. Skating. Jumping on trampoline. I'm on the moon.